Welcome to Calculations, the talk show. My name is Gary Johnson, and I've got a special guest with us, Dr. Joshua Wright. Before we get started, I want to let you know that this program is being made possible by the friends of us at the All-in-One Master Tonic. If you care about your health and wellness, you need to get the Master Tonic. There'll be more information there at the end of the show, but you can get it from our friends there. And more about that later, but right now, Dr. Joshua Wright, hey, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Gary.
All right, when I first got a hold of this from your rep, I thought, I'm like, Kanye West, polarizing figure. I'm gonna put myself out there. It might be generational, showing my age. 20 years ago, I thought, man, this guy's like maybe a musical genius. Fast forward to today, I'm like, man, he might be a little on the egocentric side, and I'm being kind. But tell me this. I'm going to learn a little bit more about you, but since your book is about Kanye, I guess I want to start out by asking, why do his words carry so much weight in the community?
I mean, Kanye is one of those folks, and we were talking about this a little bit before we started, he's very polarizing, right? Like people feel very strongly about Kanye one way or the other. There was a song lyric he had from his second album, Late Registration, where he says, everybody feels a way about K, but at least y'all feel something. Meaning that like everybody's gonna have an opinion about what he says, good, bad, or indifferent. And Kanye's one of these figures who, as you said, some people view him as this genius musically and artistically for what he does. And we know, like, whenever there's somebody who does something great in society, particularly in American society and culture, that elevates their words. Even if what they're saying may not make any sense or necessarily have a lot of value long term, the fact that you do something very, very well, whether you're a great businessman or businesswoman, whether you're an awesome athlete, in Kanye's case, an amazing musician, and you do the thing with the fashion, whatever you do really well is going to elevate your profile so that when you do speak, it's like they say, E.F. Hutton, when you speak, people listen. And I think that's the case of Kanye. When Kanye speaks, people listen. I was watching an old interview from 2018 that he did with WGCI FM, which is a radio station in his hometown of Chicago. And the young woman who was interviewing him, her name is Kendra G. And Kendra literally broke down in tears during the interview over the comments he said about Black people and slavery and, his support of Trump, because it really, it hurt her heart because she was a longtime Kanye fan and supporter. And she felt that he always stood up and spoke on behalf of Black people. And by doing that, she felt as though he was turning his back on the community. And she started crying. And what she told Kanye was that, God has really blessed you with this dynamic voice and with this power that when you speak, you literally could change the world. And that's how much your words carry. That's how much they matter to everybody worldwide, but especially people within the Black community. So I think that's why Kanye, has this magnitude, when he does speak up and voice his opinion on things.
Of all the people in hip hop, and I understand that you started the first hip hop course at the University of Maryland, Eastern Shore. Is that correct?
Right. When I was a grad student at Howard, I have on the HU.
Yeah, I kind of got that. Good branding there.
HU. So
my wife graduated from Howard.
Okay, nice. So anyway, when I was at Howard, as a graduate student, I started this event called the Hip Hop Symposium. And it was an event we did in the spring where we would basically bring together the students on campus, scholars who deal with hip hop, some local and university scholars, but then also we would have nationally known people such as a Jelani Cobb or Michael Eric Dyson who would come and rap with us as well. We would bring out the hip hop celebrities who were really hot at that particular time period. And then we also might get in like some athletes or, some media people as well. And we would talk about issues that were related to hip hop, the hip hop generation, hip hop culture, et cetera. But for the very first event, the inaugural event, we really focused on hip hop in the classroom. And from that experience, it led to me helping to start a course at Howard. Now, I'm not taking credit for starting the first hip hop course at Howard because that happened way before I was there. That happened in the 1990s. And, but the class was defunct. So when I came along, we kind of just, revitalized it with a new spin on it. And there was a course in the Afro-American Studies department for the undergrad students. And it was also a seminar that was held in the history department for the graduate students. So I was proud to, be able to work with that at Howard. And then when I got my teaching position at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, I launched a hip hop course there. I did that maybe like a couple of semesters at Eastern Shore. And then in my current university, Trinity Washington University in DC, I started a course which is called Intro to Global Hip Hop. So it's not just American-based hip hop, but we look at hip hop's evolution from the US to overseas. We look at the influence of international aspects on hip hop in its foundation to begin with, but then we also look at the way people in different countries are using hip hop over the last decade at the course I'm teaching now at Trinity. So,
okay, of all the people in hip hop, why Kanye?
Why Kanye in terms of why focusing on Kanye?
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I was a Kanye fan and I still like Kanye's music and I still like Kanye, even though like you said, like he's tough to always stand behind now. There are a lot of things he does and says that I disagree with, but because I have that long history of being someone who liked Kanye from the moment he first came on the scene as a producer, not even as a rapper, but more so as a producer,
Right.
Doing songs for Jay-Z's Blueprint, doing songs for Alicia Keys, Ludacris, other artists. And then he started his own solo career with College Dropout. I've always followed him album to album. And, I liked his music. I liked the message that was coming across in his music. He was somebody that I could relate to because, his mom is, his late mom, Donda, was a PhD, right? My mom's a PhD. He, early on had like these pro-Black messages in his music and within his rhetoric. And that was something that I really liked. Around the time when Kanye was really taking off, I was a student at Howard. So, I was in that world of academia and just Blackness and beautiful Black people, right? And Black thought and scholars at Howard University all the time. And even the people I was coming into contact with in the DC community and at my church. So, I like what Kanye was saying. And then, like I said, again, I could relate to him because of his mom, because he was someone who was, somewhat suburban, somewhat middle class, a lot of rappers. And, and it's no knock to any of them. Like Jay-Z is actually my favorite rapper, right? Like if you really ask me who do I like the best, I like Jay-Z. I like Biggie, Notorious B.I.G. But, like their stories didn't really line up with my story, in terms of the drug dealing, in terms of the poverty they grew up in. So while I like their music and I could relate to it, there was something about what Kanye was saying and like Kanye's background and even like the way he dressed that, kind of resembled my experience a little more. So I'd always been interested in him. And around the time when I got the inspiration to do the book, which was about, I want to say 2018, when like all of the TMZ and Trump stuff and all of that was happening. I was already involved in a project for the Journal of Hip Hop Studies, where I was working with these two other professors, these two young women who also graduated from Howard University, and they're at different colleges. And we were editing a special edition or a special issue for the Hip Hop of Journal Studies. It's an academic journal related to hip hop. And the issue was dedicated to Kanye, and it was dealing with Kanye and his use of Christianity and religion in his music and his videos and his concerts. And we had really just been engaged in that work for about 2 years. And then this thing happens, the TMZ, the Trump, all of that starts happening. And I was just like, wow, like, so, my antenna was already up to begin with. And then somebody had said to me once, well, why don't you just do your own book on Kanye West? And initially I was like, no, I don't really want to write a book about Kanye. But then, as this stuff was happening in 2018 and I was reading articles and I was hearing the debates in the barbershop, on TV, on the radio shows, the podcast, then that whole idea of, well, why don't you write a book on Kanye kind of came back to me. And then I was just like, well, you know what? I think I do have something to say that I don't hear in a lot of the conversation. So I think I might actually do my own project. So that's how the book came about.
Okay, I like that answer about, see, back in 2019 on the website blackmeninamerica.com, there was a article written, and I was a part of it because I wanted to know, and it came from a conversation that we had here in the office, top 10 rappers of all time.
Mm-hmm.
And two white guys said to me in the office, and I was really, I guess this is my stereotype, you know, although I should have known because they were younger in the generation that they grew up on that. But their knowledge, the weight of knowledge that they had about rap music kind of surprised me. And they said, you know, we want to weigh in on this. I said, all right, come on with your top 10 list too. And I said, well, who are the ones? And so the one guy says, well, I'm actually getting ready to go see Nas at the Kennedy Center. And he says, for me, Nas, that's the one. The other dude said Kanye, college dropout. But then we had everybody from around the web and had our writers come in. And I want to show you the list. I'm going to pull it up. I'm going to show you the list. And let's see if we can pull this up here. Here's the list. Now, it started off, you know, these are the ones that are in the mix. How they started off, you know, you see a lot of notable faces. Yeah. There's your guy, you know, Biggie, DMX, got a bunch of people. But let's scroll down. This is how it shook out. They say Public Enemy, Kanye was number 9.
Okay.
Jay-Z, number 7, Nas, 6, Snoop Dogg, 5, Run DMC, 4, NWA, 3, Eminem, 2 was a tie between Tupac and Notorious. Yeah. Do you want to take a guess at what the number one they ranked as the number one rapper?
So let me ask you this real quick. How old were the people doing the list?
30s.
Oh, in their 30s. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And race wise, it was
mostly black, mostly male.
Okay. Public Enemy, Kanye, Jay, Nas, Snoop, Run.
It threw me off. I'm gonna tell you, man. I'm just gonna.
So I would say
it was based on which group or individual had the most impact.
Oh, impact.
Yeah. Damn. The most impact. So I'm gonna just tell you, we're gonna scroll down. Drum roll. They said the Sugar Hill Gang.
Yeah. Well, to each his own.
Yeah, because it's
because
the impact they had being, you know, 79 Rappers Delight.
Okay.
And being the first one with the top 40 and things like that. But
yeah, to each his own.
those are what they call ballroom conversations.
Uh-huh.
I can tell that wasn't yours. Who would be your number one? You said Jay-Z. You said Jay-Z, right?
Yeah, Jay-Z. Sugar Hill Gang would not even be in my top 30 list, to be frankly honest. Right. And it's so funny they put that number one because in the hip-hop class that I teach, there's a docuseries we sometimes watch that Netflix put out called Hip Hop Evolution, right?
I've seen that.
Yeah. And there's an episode, I want to say it's like episode 2, where they talk about Sugar Hill Gang. And they talk about the impact that song had, but then you hear from a lot of the old heads who were rapping at that same time, like Melly Mel and some of the other
Curtis Blow.
Yeah, Curtis Blow, Cass. You hear from some of them, and they're just like, man, that's garbage. Like, that's not what we were doing on the block and in the parks at all. And then like everybody heard that song and immediately thought that was what rap was, and that wasn't rap to us at all. So it's just kind of funny to me that they would put them number one. And yeah, I would really disagree. Even in terms of influence, I get it. Like they did open the door. So you do have to give them their credit for opening the door. But because I do those lists a lot just in my head because I'm a geek like that.
Yeah.
You know, where I do like, what's the top 10, top 5, whatever, you know, and my list changes a lot. And I think, you know, if you want to do it based solely on lyricism and bars, that's a completely different list versus when we're talking influence and you know, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Look, that was just my version of a barroom conversation with us, because I would have never put Sugar Hill Gang number one.
But you know, to speak to that point, can I just say just a little more about that?
Yeah,
with the
go
list?
ahead.
We have time. Okay.
Yeah, we got time.
So yeah, so you know, with that, and there were a lot of names on that list that I did agree with. I would just probably change the order of them. But in terms of like Kanye and where Kanye will fall, for me, if we're talking solely influence and not him as a lyricist or a rapper, for me, I would really put Kanye somewhere probably between 5 and 7, you know, in terms of that list, just because I think that he has shifted the paradigm so many times in terms of hip hop, pop music in general. But since we're talking hip hop and rap, I think he's really shifted a lot of paradigms within the music. And when you start talking about family trees, right? Like,
Right.
Meaning, okay, I did this and then I inspired this person, or I work with this person, and then a branch came from here and the branch came from there, and then that led to this over there. I think that, you know, like you have to take all of those different things into consideration when you're talking about someone like a Kanye West. So that's why I do think that he's relevant, not just now, but when we talk about like all-time impact on the music and the culture, I think like you can't, you know, eliminate him from like that discussion, even if you think he's a subpar rapper or disagree with his politics or anything like that.
Well, you make a great point, because people have to separate. Because as I was listening to you, I'm thinking, you know, John Legend used to be his piano player.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so there are a lot of people that sprung from Kanye and got their start.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you make a good point. But then again, we get back to the barroom argument, man. So, hey, let me get back to your book.
Okay.
What is it that you want people to walk away from? Some of the things about your book, because it is one that sparks conversation, and it did make, you know, what I've learned about it made me think differently about some of these artists, including Kanye. And that is, I've got to separate some of my personal feelings and just be really strategic about the impact that he's had on society. Because I cannot deny, isn't he qualified or as close to being a billionaire?
No, he's a billionaire.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, it's not even close to. He is. And the number in terms of how much money he has, now that's debatable, because currently right now, the number that you hear thrown around is somewhere between 1.8 billion and 3 billion. So he's listed as the second wealthiest Black man in America behind Robert Johnson. And then in terms of, and it's also significant to note that like we only have 17 Black billionaires worldwide that we know of. Okay, maybe, you know, the numbers are off somewhere, but documented is 17. Rihanna, the pop singer, became the latest last year. And that's really significant because it's not that many. And when you talk about the US, the number is smaller. Kanye, if you hear him, he says he's worth 9 billion. We know that's not right. There was a number though.
He's using Trump's account.
Right. He's got his account. Yeah. There was a number that was thrown out though. I want to say it might have been by Bloomberg, who threw out a number at some point last year where they were saying what Kanye was worth. Kanye was the wealthiest Black man, you know, worldwide, and he's worth $6 or $7 billion. And then Forbes came back and said, no, that's not really correct, because what they're doing is they're taking into account future sales from his Adidas brand, from his Gap deal, etc., things that haven't actually happened yet. And they're trying to project down the road 3, 4, 5 years. But if you look solely at what he's worth right now, that number's much lower. So, you know, he's somewhere between 1.8 and 3 billion, which is quite a lot. I mean, regardless.
Yeah. Wow. So, impact on the culture. What's the biggest impact he's had on the culture?
Oh man, where to begin? I think just from, if we want to start with the music, obviously this man has done a lot as an individual artist. You know, the number of awards he's received is kind of staggering and breathtaking when you think about it. He has, and I wrote it down just because I wanted to make sure I had this properly. He has 70 Grammy nominations, 22
Wow, that's up
Grammy
there with
wins.
like Quincy Jones,
Yeah,
that number.
yeah, that's amazing. He has 22 Grammy wins. His last album, Donda, which came out a few months ago, was currently up for 4 Grammys, including Best Rap Album, but also Best Album, period. And that's a big deal because there's probably less than a handful of hip hop albums ever to really like be listed in that category for Best Overall Album, right?
Right.
So you talk about those individual awards, the number one albums, and the number of albums he sold, over 21 million albums sold worldwide. You talk about the influences he's had on a number of different artists: Drake, Childish Gambino, Chance the Rapper, Travis Scott. Like a lot of the really hot young artists today had, some influence from Kanye West. You look at how he helped to revitalize Jay-Z's career with the Blueprint and, production he did for other Jay-Z albums. They had an album together, Watch the Throne, in 2012, which gave Jay-Z his biggest single of all time, I believe, which is N Words in Paris, right? You talk about how Kanye has shifted the culture in terms of hip hop. First of all, the way we look at hip hop, right? Like we could think about that old school boom bap era from back in the day in the 80s and 90s. And then, when you look at a Kanye album, especially Late Registration, where he worked with this man named John Bryan, who was this white guy who did soundtracks for movies. Like John Bryan brought this orchestral sound to that album, which was brand new for a hip hop album at that time. We had never heard that, right? Or you look at some albums like a Yeezus, where Kanye's working with all of these European producers and had like this mix of hip hop with punk, with techno, like this very Euro sound. But then at the same time, while that was probably his most Eurocentric sounding album, he also had a lot of samples of reggae artists and dancehall artists. So he was mixing that into it as well. Then you talk about in more recent years, him kind of like crossing over into gospel and what he's doing with the gospel music. So that's just Kanye from a music standpoint. Then you talk about the fashion with the Yeezys, the sneakers, the clothing. He has to deal with Gap, right? He has a new deal with Gap plus Balenciaga, which is something coming out later this year. So clothing. Then you talk about the politics. He ran for office, and even though it was a fail, he still, believe it or not, won 60,000 votes last year in the election for president. He appeared on at least 13 ballots, including my home state of Maryland, right? So that's pretty, phenomenal given the fact that he has no political experience and really had no business running for president. You talk about the mental health stuff with Kanye. He's doing things with film, with just so much. It's just too much to really like kind of throw out, and I don't want to bore your listeners by saying everything that Kanye's done. He got a PhD, he got an honorary PhD from School of Art Institute in Chicago in 2015. The man who gave Kanye, listen to this, the man who awarded Kanye the PhD was a man by the name of Dr. Walter Massey, who at one point was the president of Morehouse College. And he was at this school at the time. And he proudly, you can pull up the video on YouTube, bestows this honor upon, as he says, Dr. West, right? So, this guy's done quite a bit. Despite all of the polarization.
Despite all the polarization, is he a genius in your view? Maybe musically, what do you think?
So I think, the term genius, I don't really like to just kind of throw that on every and anybody, because I think that's an honor to be held a genius. I think from a musical standpoint, based on the albums, based on what I've heard other people who worked with him, some of the best producers of all time who describe his method in the studio and the things that he does. Yeah, I think you could probably say from a music standpoint that there's genius there. Fashion wise, he's cutting edge. And the stuff sells like hotcakes, like the stuff really does sell. I don't know how much he gets from, other, fashion creatives who work with him in terms of designing the sneakers and everything. But definitely from a music standpoint solely, I think it's safe to give him the genius label. Anything else, I'm really hesitant to do that. And definitely, like when we start talking about politics and social issues, he makes good points, but I would not call him a genius in those areas. And I mean, he's not a really well-read person. He says that he doesn't really read a lot, that he gets a lot of his knowledge from life, from talking to people, from his travels. And I think that's good. And I think you definitely can learn a whole lot from a life experience. But I also think, and this is just me as a scholar, I think that there are people who have studied these topics and who've written about these topics. And I think that every now and then, if you are going to speak on them in a public setting, it's probably good just to see what other folks are saying so that you have a reference before you just kind of shoot from the hip based on your opinion or what, your friend over there tell you, who may not have really fact checked what they were telling you when they gave you that information.
Is he a good marketer in terms of self-promotion?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely. I mean, definitely. Here's a great example. This summer when he was putting out his album, Donda, he was doing these listening parties, right? Where he was telling people, okay, we're going to do a listening party here, and then the album's going to come out at midnight. The album will not come out for like another month. But he did 3 of these listening parties. They were held at football stadiums, right? He did the first 2 at the stadium in Atlanta where the Atlanta Falcons play. And then he did the last one at Soldier Field in Chicago, home of the Bears. And the reason why I would say he's an excellent marketer is because, number one, all of those concerts, all of those listening parties broke records for Apple in terms of live streams, the number of people listening on a live stream. But then also the fact that you had 40,000 people show up to a football field, the one in Atlanta or Soldier Field in Chicago. 40,000 people showed up in the middle of a pandemic with
Right.
COVID going on just to listen to this man sit there and listen to unfinished songs from his album. He wasn't performing. He didn't have special guests out there. I mean, Kim Kardashian was there, so people got to see Kim. But otherwise, I mean, you're watching me right now, just sitting here on my couch, listening to my music that is it's not even complete. You're hearing 2 verses of a song that's probably going to get redone before it finally comes out. And 40,000 people showed up for that. And I don't know if they paid money for tickets or not, but if they did, wow. Like, I think that's a tribute to his marketing skills.
Oh my goodness. Oh, I'm just thinking, what does that say about them during a deadly pandemic?
You know what though? But it speaks to the point that I really make at the very beginning of my book, right? Where I say, America, we're obsessed with celebrity, right?
Yes.
We are, in this country, we are obsessed with celebrity. How many people do follow their favorite athlete, singer, actor, author, scholar, whoever, right? Social media influencer. How many people follow them on Twitter, follow them on Instagram, Facebook, look them up on Google to see what they're doing. I mean, we have these shows that come on every night after the nightly news. Access
Entertainment
Hollywood.
Tonight and Access
Entertainment
Hollywood.
Tonight. We have, right, TMZ. We have all of these shows that are dedicated to nothing but that. I mean, we have pages in our newspapers that are dedicated to just following celebrities. We have the E! Network, right? So, I mean, we have an obsession with celebrity in this culture, which is kind of sickening in a lot of ways when you think about it. Like, why are we so obsessed with these people? Why is it that when a celebrity comes, and I know this from firsthand experience, partly because when I would do my events at Howard and I would have my hip hop conferences, we would talk about, well, what guests are we going to invite to speak to the students, right? And you could get a scholar like, who's not as well known for maybe one, I'm not, it's going to sound bad, but a lot of times we try to get them for free. But like, if you were going to pay them, you would get a scholar who's less known for probably under $2,000. Somebody who's a bigger name, they might come at you for 10, maybe 15,000, right? And again, this is from Howard, right? This is not some really wealthy majority white university who has money just to throw away, right? But then when you start talking about the celebrities, you have celebrities coming at you for like 40,000, 50,000 just to appear on a panel and talk when, you know, everybody else on that panel who's not famous could probably speak circles around them. But you're paying for their name recognition.
Oh, yeah.
You're paying because, you know, once people see them on a flyer, you know, they're going to show up in droves to see them, to take a picture, to maybe meet them, whatever. And whatever they say, it even might not even be the most impactful thing. Just the fact that they say it and it's coming from them, it hits different from me or you saying it, right? So we're obsessed with celebrity, but also in the Black community, celebrity means something different, right? Celebrity, and this, you know, comes back to the book's title, Wake Up, Mr. West, Kanye West and the Double Consciousness of Black Celebrity, right? In the Black community, the celebrity has always had this special place because they were the ones off in the early years who had an opportunity that wasn't afforded to the masses, right? Certain doors would be open to them because they could sing and dance well, because they could hit a baseball, right? You look at Jackie Robinson, right? Jackie had to be perfect. Jackie had to be a credit to his race. He had to uplift the race, right? Because the thought was if Jackie did well, then other Blacks would get the opportunity to play Major League Baseball, and then the doors might open up in basketball and football. And then, you know, we're talking sports, but now we're talking about integrating our colleges so we can recruit those college athletes. If we're bringing in Blacks to play sports at these colleges, well, we could also bring Black people just to attend these colleges in general. We could let Black people come and work at our companies. We could let them move into our neighborhoods, come to our churches, marry our women, et cetera, right? So the celebrity, you know, had like this, and it was kind of unfair that you put all of this pressure and all of this weight on the celebrity to really do good and to really be the credit for the race, because they're the ones with the spotlight, and they're the ones that if they have crossover success, meaning they have success out of the Black community into mainstream America, right, that everybody is seeing that one person. So, you know, their success means a lot. And if they mess up, it was a stain on the race.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was a big stain. I mean, we look at people now, you know, you can talk about Kanye messing up. We don't really, you know, nobody cares too much because, I mean, it's Kanye, right? When OJ or Bill Cosby messed up, it was a stain, but it wasn't that big of a stain because by that point, we had enough different examples of Black people in the spotlight who were doing well. We had famous Black people in the spotlight doing well, but then we also had everyday Black people who were also doing really well in their position. So it was okay if one famous Black person messed up. That didn't stain the whole race. But for a long time before, really, I mean, I guess like the 1970s, I mean, you could say if you were famous and you messed up, I mean, it was like an indictment on all Black people. Like all Black men were seen as bad. All Black women were seen as bad or, you know, not intelligent.
I mean, when I was growing up, if something bad happened on TV, everybody would hold their breath and say, "Oh Lord, I hope it ain't a Black person." Oh Lord, hope it ain't a Black person. We got a picture of the suspect now.
Please don't be Black. I know.
Yeah, woo.
I know. It's like when the DC Sniper, when we found out the DC Sniper was Black, people were like, "Oh my goodness, what? No."
Oh, I'm going to be interviewing the ex-wife of the DC Sniper,
oh,
Mildred.
Wow.
Yeah, so she'll be coming on the show pretty soon.
Okay.
Oh man. All right. Is there anything that I haven't asked you about yourself or the book that you'd like to get out there? Because I do have one question I want to ask you first, and then we'll follow up to that question.
Okay. Yeah.
You're a young brother, man. You're doing a lot. And so what was the earliest or most vivid recollection that you had of ever being or feeling different, if you've ever felt different?
I always knew from like childhood that I was supposed to do something with you know, with my life, right? And that's just because of where I come from. I mentioned before my mom being a scholar, right, having a PhD. My dad, you know, was a scholar as well. You know, he worked on his PhD. He was a pastor for 30 years. My grandmother was an educator, school teacher. My grandfather was involved in education as well. And you know, on my mom's side, her family, they come from South Carolina. And I grew up and spent a lot of time in South Carolina when I was young and in my teenage years. So being around those folks, being with people who really experienced Jim Crow and they knew what it meant that if you were a Black person and you had a chance to do something with education, that you needed to take that and go off and do good things to help other people and help the community around you. And then also being someone who's like grounded in the church, because my dad's a retired pastor. Like I knew that people kind of looked at me different when I was a kid just because they knew who my parents were, my grandparents were. So I knew that I had to do something, with my talents to, make everybody proud, so to speak. But also, as I got older, it wasn't just about making others proud. It was like I wanted to do it. Like I wanted to do something, and give back. And my journey is, I'm still in the early years of my journey, and I'm still doing different things. So whether it's being in the classroom teaching, which I love, working with students, at UMES, I was working at University of Maryland Eastern Shore. I was working with mostly Black students. We had some white students as well too, but giving back to those students meant a lot to me. Currently where I'm at, Trinity, it's a women's college, and we have a lot of students who are Black women. We have a lot of Latina students who are first generation, DACA students, children of immigrants. So, I mean, they have really amazing stories. So every day I'm in the classroom with them, I really feel like I have like an extra obligation to do my part because I know what struggles they're coming from. So I really got to do my part. So being in the classroom, doing these books I love. I have a podcast I do called Woke History, which is distributed through NPR One. And, things like that I like because it gives me a chance to get my message beyond the classroom walls because everyone can't afford college. So this is a chance that I can leave the college and actually like speak to the people, and meet them in their homes or meet them in the street or wherever they're at, and hopefully have an impact on them as well. And when I write, I'm a professor, so I write academically, but I always try to make sure that I'm writing in such a way that, someone who's less academically inclined can still pick up the book and can still read and can still take something away from the book and be inspired by it and learn something. And with this book, even though the focus is Kanye, that's the title, Kanye West, it's really like, it's a bigger story though, right? Like I'm using Kanye more so as a case study on issues of race and celebrity in America, right? What does it mean to be a Black person in America? What does it mean to be a Black celebrity in America, right? That's where the title Double Consciousness is important. And I want to just kind of define that real fast for anyone who may see the book and see double consciousness and not really understand what that word means. So the term comes from W.B. Du Bois, who was one of our leading scholars and activists in the early 20th century. He was a co-founder for the NAACP. And W.E.B. Du Bois is the one who's often associated with the term double consciousness, right? So the best way to really kind of define it is he argues that Black Americans, we had this competing identity, right? Seeing themselves or seeing ourselves as both American, but then also as a Black person at the same time, living in a white-centric American society. And I think that that's something that we all could kind of relate to. Like, yeah, I'm Black, but I'm American. And we had these debates sometimes, like they talk about some people really wear their Blackness on their sleeve and they're always pro-Black and they're all about giving to Black businesses, Black banks, Black causes, etc. Have a Black wife, kids go to HBCUs. And then you have other Blacks who are, yeah, I'm a proud Black man or Black woman, but I also want to be a person of the world. I don't want to just limit myself based on my skin color. If I like rock or I like country music, that's fine. If I want to marry a woman who's white or who's Asian, that's fine too. If I want to send my kids to a school where they're mostly white, that's fine. And, I have to look out for myself. And, that doesn't necessarily take away from my Blackness. Now, some Blacks will, kind of turn their back on the community and forget about people. We saw that with O.J. Simpson. But, just because you don't do things that are stereotypically Black doesn't mean you're less of a Black person. And with the celebrities really in like this unique place because for a lot of them, they're going to have fans who aren't necessarily Black people, right? You could go to a rap concert and see like 70% white people, right? I've been to Chris Rock shows. The last Chris Rock stand-up I went to, the majority of the people there were like white people in their 40s and 50s, right? Chris is still telling his black jokes though, but the audience is white, and that's really unique too, because it's kind of like we talk about code switching, and like, you know, people say things in one room where they may say something different in another room, or what I may say, the white audience may hear it one way, but then the black listeners hearing me speak, it comes out completely different, right? And we all deal with that as black people, but again, with the black celebrities really magnified. So I'm using Kanye's story, you know, in his biography and all these different things happening to Kanye, to compare Kanye with other celebrities, past and present, and to say, okay, as an everyday black person who's just reading this, who's not famous, like, how can I relate to some of these same experiences that they have? When Kanye said, "I stand with Trump," if I'm a black person who votes Republican, you know, maybe I feel that same pressure from the black community too, because I'm not voting the way everybody else does, right? Or if I, you know, marry someone who's not black, you know, some people had an issue with that, with Kanye, and when other celebrities have done it, right? They say you get some money, you're gonna leave your blank for a white girl, right? Well, you know, when that happens in the real world for a black man or for a black woman, you know, they're not always met with, "Oh, you go girl," or "You go boy." Sometimes
Yeah.
they're met with, people looking down on them for doing that, right? So I think the celebrity story is really important, because I think we can see a little bit of ourselves within, you know, the celebrities, right?
No, that's good. Let me tell you, man, you are a relatable professor. The way you speak is hearable, I think, for a wide range of people. And so I think this book is really going to be successful. And like you said, the Kanye is just one part of the picture. You know, he's not the be all end all.
Yeah.
And so that's, and, and your conversation also talks about what I speak of on the calculations website. What are the calculations that we have to make every day? We got to make these calculations every day. Somebody pisses you off, you're going to get upset and mad. How mad are you going to get? Or for me, as a large 6'4" black man in front of folks, you know, and what's the ultimate goal? You know, so I might have to temper my being pissed off to the level of pistivity, and you know, express myself in another way to get what I need, get my needs met. But then again, the calculations, because I know 1 degree over and I'm that angry black man, that stereotypical angry black man.
Yeah, that's so true. You know, in the book, and you know, so Kanye, you know, he's funny, right? Because Kanye says whatever he feels at all times, right? And now some people will say, well, it's the mental illness and he's having manic moments when he does it. We don't know, right? But Kanye made this interesting point. He was doing a Sunday service, which is his gospel concert.
Yeah, I've seen some of
that
those on YouTube.
Yeah, he was doing it at the Howard University homecoming 2019, right? Just before the pandemic started. And he gets up there and he talks to the crowd, and he says that I'm in a position that few black people are. I could say and do what I want with no repercussions. You tell me somebody else who can do that. Like, I'm not, that's not an exact quote, but that's what he's saying, that I have the freedom to almost speak completely free, you know. And, you know, Kanye's in a different position because, I mean, he's super wealthy, he's super famous. And then people say that's just Kanye being Kanye. It's like Charles Barkley can say whatever because that's what people expect from him. So it's different. But like you say, for most people, we do have to watch what we say, how we move. And even, you know, some other celebrities, you know, they feel that same pressure. Sam Cooke, I mentioned him briefly in the book. Sam Cooke, if you've seen the movie One Night in Miami,
I've seen it.
Yeah. So, you know, Muhammad Ali, for listeners who don't know it, Muhammad Ali wins the world championship. And then the movie's about that night where he celebrates with his good friends who were there at the fight, Malcolm X, Jim Brown, and then Sam Cooke. And Sam Cooke's this great black singer who's known for making pop-friendly bubblegum type music. Now, some of those songs, again, we talk about double meanings. Like, he had a song, Chain Gang, which to black people, they may think one thing, right? When you say a chain gang, working on a chain gang, where white people, they may not hear that at all. They may just think, oh, yeah, it's a cool song, working on a chain gang, and we dance.
Yeah.
But, you know, in the film Malcolm X, was coming at Sam saying that you're not using your platform right. You're up here making all this money, singing to white people, and you're not doing anything for Black people and the Black cause. And Sam Cooke has to check him and say, look, brother, like, I'm not up here calling white people devils, and I'm not up here, speaking from a platform about Black nationalism and things of that. But don't question my Blackness. I'm moving differently because over here in this realm, if I want to make money, I can't be that angry Black man because it's going to hurt my bottom line. It's going to hurt my pocket. But what I am doing is I'm taking that money from these record sales and I'm opening my own record label. I'm opening my own publishing company. So what that means is the artists who sign with me, the Black artists, when they make music, now they're going to control their masters, meaning they're going to own the music. So every time those songs play, that's dollars, not just in my pocket, but that's dollars in their pocket, as opposed to them being signed to these white labels and publishing companies who reap all the benefits from all of those hit songs, right? So I have to do this the way I'm doing it over here, right? That's what Sam Cooke was trying to get across to Malcolm X, that, we have to move a little differently. So just to come back to your point, yeah, like everybody can't necessarily move the same way, right? And the way we show our Blackness may look different, and that's okay because the Black community is not monolithic, right? Whether we're talking the superstars or just everyday common folk, we all have different experiences, we have different opinions, and just because we think differently or dress differently or whatever, there's no reason to cancel somebody or to throw them in a sunken place and say, oh, well, you're not Black anymore. Let's find out why that person thinks that way. And then we could agree to disagree, but we don't necessarily have to cancel them and question, their Blackness as a man or a woman.
Okay, final question. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you want to get out there?
No, I think we covered just about everything. And I just want people to buy the book. This book, I know we're talking Black issues, but for anyone who's listening who's not Black, the book's for you too. Because again, a lot of these celebrities, most of their fans really do come from outside of the Black community, right? I mean, there's this great scene in Do the Right Thing where Spike Lee's asking the guy in the pizzeria, who your favorite, actor?
Sal.
Yeah, he's naming all these black people, yet he's using the N-word repeatedly. So number one, if you're not from the Black community and you listen to this interview, you see this book, understand that these celebrities that you watch on sports and listen to their music and see them at the movies, they're still Black people at the end of the day, right? So if they do want to protest, if they do want to take a knee, if they do want to post something on social media, don't get mad at them because they're still people at the end of the day. And also you can read this book to really understand some of the experiences and struggles that these folks, from Kanye to, people who came before him, have had faced over the years and stuff they're still dealing with now. And hopefully that helps you see these people, when you want to critique them or, talk about them or make fun of them or make memes about them, you understand that these people are multi-dimensional folks, right? So keep that in mind as you're judging them.
That is great. I want to certainly thank you and let people know that they can buy your book at all the major online retailers. It comes out on February 1st. There's also an article on blackmeninamerica.com. And Dr. Joshua Wright, thank you for being on the show. We'll be back at you.
Thanks a lot. Much. It was fun. Thanks, Gary.
All right.